But you know the crazy part is I set this
What's
up
up?
on my Windows laptop. And like
Nice.
I'm on a desktop now and I'm still accessing my Galaxy Note stuff that I set up like a year ago. And that's
That's
kind
see,
of
that's
that's kind of been
cool.
the change in Windows over the last couple of years is this like persistent
Exactly.
nature to it. And I really like it.
Yeah. It's gonna get even better when AI gets more advanced,
Yeah, with
and
Sam Altman
obviously
at the helm.
we'll
Well,
cover
let's go
this
ahead and get
later.
into our topics and let's do the intro.
Exactly. Got it. Let's hit it.
All right, hello and welcome to the Vertical Bar Podcast. I'm your co-host, your name here, joining you from Orlando, Florida. Dive into the latest innovations, tech trends, and just chat about the tech industry at large. And I'm here with
And I'm Marcus, your other co-host. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Together, we're on a mission to explore, share, and demystify the world of technology.
from our own company, Vertical Bar Media, to the wider tech universe. We're here to dive into all things digital. But enough about us. What's on our topic list for today, Marcus?
All right, so I always laugh at this part because I can never get this part right on the document. In this week, Microsoft hires former AI CEO Sam Altman.
Yeah, who had been out of work for a whole like 48 hours.
I know it's so crazy. That was it. All of a sudden, dude, right after Microsoft Ignite, which was a couple of weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, or it was last week actually, where
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were basically talking about AI advancements in the world of like IT professionals and business and Azure and Intra.
Oh
They
yeah.
were like there were so many big displays and there were like partnerships with NVIDIA and
Yeah, and
stuff like
Microsoft
that.
has
Now
has
all of
said
us,
that they remain committed to all of it. That they've said,
yeah,
and especially with this, with what they're doing, willing to hire and like basically set off their own his own company. Yeah, I have a lot of faith in Microsoft to be able to do this.
this is a win for
But
them for
faith
sure.
in
This is
Nintendo to bring Super Mario RPG Remake. This is
yeah,
basically like a faithful nostalgia trip.
that's what I heard. Yeah, which is awesome. Good for Nintendo fans. They're pretty good at holding off on things. They're sort of like Apple, as we discussed before. They hold off on things until they need it, and it seems like they released this at a good time to sort of get everybody to get to sort of like the last leg of the Switch, I guess. I know they're announcing Switch their Switch follow-up or their Switch successor next year in 2024. So I think this is like their big last event,
Yeah,
and
and we
then
may have
everybody will
actually
be on
got
to
a sneak peek at the processor that's going to be in it and the screen that it's going to
cool.
have with the Steam
Nice.
OLED refresh or the
Oh,
Steam
nice.
Deck
Cool.
OLED refresh.
Dude,
Um,
handheld is taking off. I'm so excited.
yeah, man. And the PlayStation Portal came out for $200. You can play it on a
Yeah,
screen on your
exactly.
couch instead of on your wall.
It's going to be interesting to see how Sony advances that because there's obviously going to be a second version. There's obviously going to be some future versions, and I think they need to
Yeah, I
intentionally
think it's a
start off
little
a little basic
hamstringed as it
now.
is. I think it could be a
Yeah,
little bit better.
yeah,
But overall, I think that it's a good entry level. If you already own a PlayStation, you already own a DualSense controller. I mean, it just kind of makes sense. Like you can be able to play over Wi-Fi, but the lack
yeah,
of a web browser, not being able to do authentication for like
yeah.
being able to play at a coffee shop or being able to play in a lounge or something like this, like away from home.
Yeah.
It's kind of
hmm
supported, but it doesn't have the kind of support that makes it readily available yet. So that'll
Right.
be
I
interesting.
do think that they're going to release another version later on that can do all that stuff, but it's going to be more
Yeah.
expensive. It's probably going to be around 300 or 400. I
Well,
think
they just need
Sony
to bring
is
back the
being
PS
careful.
Vita.
I know
They
the
were
PS
they were
Vita
innovators.
X.
They did it. They did it right. I think that the technology
The reception for
was a
that
little
was
bit
really good,
behind it.
actually.
Yeah,
It
but I mean
was.
the
You're right.
fact that it
You're right.
required physical media and that it didn't have very much memory on board or expandable storage,
hmm
just kind of points to overall Sony's walled gardens that they want.
Exactly, because they had their own like SD card competitor. I forgot what it was called, but their memory cards were always, or their storage cards, whatever the fuck you call them, were always more expensive than everything
Oh
else. I
yeah,
remember
well
when
there's
whenever I
actually a
got
lot of
my
good reasons for that.
oh,
Because
okay, well,
Sony
oh
does make
yeah,
a lot
you're
of
coming from
digital
the
cameras
photography
and
end, so you
digital,
know.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
Cool.
it's kind of sucks because they do make compact flash cards and they make like Sony proprietary brand cards that are a lot more expensive, but generally they are more reliable.
Nice. I didn't know that because they used to get a lot of shit back on GameFAQs. I used to be a member of the GameFAQs message board community back when PSP was a thing. But yeah, I remember having the first version. I thought it was awesome. I got a couple of games for it. I didn't get the Vita, but I'll never forget being able to play like a PlayStation level game like on the way to school when we were in high school. That was just the coolest thing ever. It was almost unheard of. But
Yeah,
you're
right.
right.
Like we had
Technology
Game
was
Boys at
behind
that
it.
point, and then like,
Exactly.
oh
And then
man,
all of a sudden we have 3D graphics like in our
yeah,
hands. And then it was just at the time, I don't think people understand like what that kind of transition was. It was like you were literally getting a piece of the future. But you're right, things have changed now. So it'll be interesting to see them get back into that, I guess, that sector and see how they advance it. Hopefully Microsoft is next. I really hope that we get some sort of Xbox um some like Xbox Surface touchscreen sort of fusion device that's very AI capable in the future. You know,
yeah.
hopefully we do.
Well,
We'll
our
see.
next topic also is the Superman Legacy cast. Previous Man of Steel contender Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. And
Yeah,
without forgetting to thank our
this is big
AI
news.
overlords for scripting all this, let's dive in. So what's going on with Microsoft and Altman?
Altman. So things were going well, right? We had Microsoft Ignite last year. They were announcing a lot of cool things with Microsoft 365, AI, Copilot. Obviously, one big thing this recent week is that Copilot has now been announced for Microsoft 365 and it's been launched. I think it's only available to enterprise subscribers, so you need like a license through your employer. It's like a $9,000 account at this time. So it'll trickle down to some of us poorer people later on. But Copilot's taken off. So it's interesting that this happened. And then all of a sudden, I think on what's today? Today's Tuesday. So I
Well,
think like
I
Sunday
think the
night.
bigger story on this is just OpenAI. I mean, I know Microsoft
Yeah,
is
no, of course.
hiring
It's
CEO, or they've offered to hire him. But
yes.
overall, like what's going on with OpenAI is like kind of wild. So I
Yeah,
don't know if you know much of the backstory, but
only a little bit.
OpenAI is actually like a conglomerate of a few companies, and overall, OpenAI is owned by a nonprofit organization. And
Cool.
the kind of the unique thing here is those that board of directors for the nonprofit organization are not direct investors in OpenAI's for-profit ventures, which have produced ChatGPT 3 and 4, and a litany of other products, including Dolly, the image generator. And
Yeah.
and it's kind of
Email.
interesting because this nonprofit board, who has controlling interest of OpenAI, is receiving billions of dollars of funding from Microsoft. And so I'll actually just read through
Yeah, a lot.
some of the things that happened recently here. So on November 17th, Altman was removed as CEO based on the board's lack of confidence with him. The CTO
Some sort
was
of
taking over
communication
as
issue.
the CEO interim.
Yeah,
Say what?
for a couple of days. No, I was saying, wasn't their initial explanation was that he wasn't communicating with them effectively,
Yeah,
or
they said he wasn't
he
being
wasn't
properly
telling
candid
them
with the
everything?
board, which
Fluff.
could mean a couple things, but basically, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, right? Like,
Yeah, no,
OpenAI
of
is supposed
course.
to be a nonprofit. It's supposed to be an open source kind of like
Hmm.
approach to artificial intelligence, um, but it's wildly successful. It's
Right. And
touted to be the next Google. I mean, there's already over 700 employees. Microsoft is
nice.
pouring billions of dollars into this.
But how
Um,
can you remain open source when you have the backing of a major tech conglomerate? Like, I guess,
I
is
mean,
that where there's
you can
friction?
publish your standards and like talk about it openly, right? Like that's
Hmm.
pretty much all you can do. Um, because overall the community isn't really able to contribute much to this in terms of openness, right? Like these
Hmm.
are the next stages of how these large language models are actually operating, and they're kind of being developed by the best and the brightest, honestly.
Thank God.
Yeah,
We're
right.
in good hands.
Yeah, so I think overall, I think that OpenAI's board of directors were kind of fearful that they weren't taking enough safety and caution in developing artificial intelligence.
Gotcha.
So they removed it. They didn't need any kind of approval from any investors. Like they didn't need that. But essentially, in doing that, they kind of slapped Microsoft in the face, right? Because
Right.
Microsoft didn't have any board seats. They weren't aware of this decision at all. And putting billions of dollars on the line and making all these commitments at Microsoft Ignite, like this is kind of crazy
Yeah,
going on. So not only
exactly.
was he fired, Greg Bookman was removed from the board, and he ultimately
That
quit.
was the co-founder, right?
Yeah, so that was his
Okay, cool.
the president of OpenAI.
It's like a red wedding.
Um, yeah, and apparently there's quite a few others. And this has actually kind of culminated into over 700 employees signing a letter stating that they would quit their jobs
There you
and
go.
join Microsoft if the board does not rehire Altman as CEO and leave the company. They want the board to be completely disintegrated. Um,
Yeah. So the actual company liked these two guys. It's just people who make the decisions who aren't really involved in day-to-day activity came in and said, "Hey, this isn't working." It's I don't know. It's weird. I think if you have the
Kind of. I
backing of
think
the employees,
ChatGPT is moving into such a highly monetizable model that
mhm.
it's kind of outpacing anybody's predictions. I think Altman wants to lean into that. I think the company overall wants to lean into that because it's getting more useful.
It's
It
probably more
was
interesting too
yeah,
for the
I
people
mean
that are actually
immediately
doing the groundwork.
ChatGPT 3 was more useful than Google. Like Google hasn't been I have not used Google for anything.
Damn.
Because like
I've been
I
switching
mean
back and
I
forth.
use it for like maps and stuff when I need to find something close to me, but like ChatGPT is infinitely better at anything that I need like to ask Google.
Yeah. No, I actually, since I've been back on Windows 11, I actually have been using Copilot a little bit more, and I do like the integration of Copilot, Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Edge is my main browser now, so I do load it up. I do know that the version in Edge is stronger than the dedicated version on the sidebar in Windows. So hopefully they'll bring some of those features over, but it's definitely gotten better since its announcement back in February. It's now Google Bard has also been updated as well, so it does a pretty good job. I do think that Copilot has more features. You can add plugins from third party. I think you can add plugins from third parties. I know you can add in plugins from the Microsoft services, but seems like they're headed in a good direction. So again, this is a win for Microsoft,
Yeah,
and I'm definitely
and so with Altman joining Microsoft, this is actually kind of tentative because while Microsoft has actually done as much as they can to bring
mhm,
Altman on. Altman has not certified this and is giving the board an opportunity to like surrender essentially,
mhm.
which is just fucking wild. Can you imagine like
Yeah,
getting fired from your job and then just having the whole company like turn around and like sign a letter with you and say like that was wrong?
exactly.
Like
Right. But he can go in any direction and still be happy, I feel like. And it's funny because didn't OpenAI just have their first tech conference like a year or two ago, or not a year or two ago, a week or two ago? Like how fast this happened is crazy. OpenAI had their tech conference, Microsoft had
yeah,
theirs,
no,
and
no,
within
they
a
did it at
like
Friday
it's
at a noon, right? Thinking that like, oh, nobody's gonna know, like it's just gonna blow
yeah,
over. Within a day, Microsoft was already like calling the board and like getting them into meetings, like on a Saturday.
I just don't know what the board would have gained from this. Obviously it was gonna backfire. I don't know. It's
Well,
just
I think the board was acting in good faith, but
the
based
board.
on I don't know.
I was making a
It
joke from
just
The
seems
Office,
absolutely
sorry.
wild because they obviously didn't have a pulse on what was actually going on. They may have been acting in good faith, protecting their
Yeah.
directives, but they weren't protecting their company.
It was just bad timing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a really bad timing. I don't know. It's just weird.
I mean,
I think that
it
there
could
was some
be
sort of
it
an
could be
issue.
wild if Microsoft goes through with this. I
Yeah,
think that I think that
the
that
story
would
was kind of
actually probably
iffy
be
as it was
pretty bad
happening
for OpenAI though.
because it's also been reported that Sam Altman was in talks to coming back to OpenAI, and I think even Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, I think at one point it was reported by either TechCrunch or The Verge that he had even looked into getting Sam back to OpenAI. So it's like
Well, according to
I
the
don't know, it's been
Wikipedia
going
page, which
back and forth
has
in only.
yeah,
You
the
said
references
Wikipedia?
for The Verge says that
Yeah,
Satya Nadella announced Altman and Brockman will be joining the company and lead a new
yeah,
advanced
no, that was the
research
recent
team.
one. Yes,
The
yeah,
partnership has
exactly. They're
not been
forming a new team.
certified, though. Also, according to the board, is because
Legal.
Altman is giving the board another opportunity to negotiate with him.
Gotcha. Cool. And you said
So,
Wikipedia,
I mean,
right?
ultimately, Microsoft probably offered him a pile of money, and he's turning it around and saying, "Hey, do you want to give me more money at OpenAI, or do you want to lose 700 employees?"
Oh yeah, they have a lot. Oh my God, this is
Yeah, because
bad. It's
over
good, but
700
it's
employees
bad.
have signed a letter with Altman saying that they'll leave the company if Altman is not brought back on as a CEO. I could see a
Also,
position where he becomes a board of director for them and not necessarily and still continues his role with Microsoft. So that he can guide the company in a direction that apparently 700 out of 800 employees agree with. So that's kind of I think that's
it's
ultimately
insane.
where it's going to end up. Like he's going to get a board seat out of this, but maybe not return to OpenAI as it is. But maybe also Microsoft just might buy OpenAI. Like they already paid a lot of money. Why not pay a little bit more?
Exactly. Dude, it's insane how like Microsoft has been doing this year. Microsoft really only had Xbox, you know? They don't
Oh
have a
yeah.
mobile platform. There's no Windows Phone. Windows 11 wasn't really received well when it was released back in 2021. You know, they transitioned Office to Microsoft 365. Not many people talk about it just yet, but like it's crazy how they've been able to like basically become number one in tech all year long. They announced um, a chat GPT 4 and all that and being AI, all that stuff back in February. And it's been like a solid 9 months of them just winning. So, I just always try to think about how is this all going to be in a year or 2 or 3 or 5 years? Like the things that we'll be able to do with our computers and our phones, it's just like it's insane. I'm so glad we're starting a company right at this time because it's going to make it so much easier. We're pretty much guaranteed to be successful, not to be big-headed, but I think we did a pretty good job.
Well, let's get a little big head and let's talk about Super Mario RPG.
Okay, cool.
So this game was
So
released November 17th, the day of
it was,
Saltman's. Uh,
I know, big stories. I know it's
yeah,
like you took some of the.
go
And it's
ahead.
interesting with the story because I didn't hear too much about this. I only just knew this game was coming out like a week or two ago. It's supposed to be for diehard Nintendo fans. I know that the original Super Mario RPG came out back in 1996. I don't think there's been there's not been much talk about that game. It came out, like the year before Final Fantasy VII came out. RPGs in America really didn't take off until around that time. It was a huge thing back in Japan, but turn-based RPGs weren't really a thing until Final Fantasy became big in '97. So it definitely has a following. It's a popular game. But to go what I can't say 20 years, but like 14, 15 years with nothing, and then all of a sudden you get a remake of a classic on the Switch is good for Nintendo fans. I think that Nintendo had that Mario film that did really well this year, so it seems like they they always have something that they can pull out no matter what time of the year it is. It's interesting because the Switch doesn't really directly compete with the Xbox or the PlayStation at all. It's always been its own thing, but it's just good to know that Nintendo is in healthy hands. And not only that, but I feel like all of this is building up to Super Smash Brothers. I feel like whenever Nintendo has a hit with their like with their popular characters or their popular games and now movies. Effectively, this is all building up to like an Avengers level Super Smash Brothers event, whether it's like an RPG game or a film. So like, I don't know. This stuff excites me despite me not being a diehard Nintendo fan.
Yeah, I can actually see
What are
that
your thoughts?
with their recent crackdown on community events. Like maybe they
Yeah,
are looking to build
they're trying to save
something
all of them for
in,
themselves,
yeah. Classic
which is
Nintendo.
smart. I mean,
But it's cool. I mean, I
that's
like that they
smart.
bring back.
It
I
sounds really
like that
smart.
these bring. Is there a price on this? Is it digital or physical copies available for the Switch, or how does that work? You know.
That's a good question. I'm gonna look it up. All right, so it looks like this
Okay,
game
it looks like so they
is
have both physical and
59.
digital,
All right, good, good.
and they're both 59.99. Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be that way in a year or two. It seems like digital is definitely taking over. Oh, this website is nice. Nintendo has a
Well,
really nice website.
I think specifically for Switch is probably physical will continue.
That's
Um,
good. That's good.
yeah, because they do have the ability to take physical copies.
Yeah,
Eligible
no,
for up to 300 gold points. Ooh.
yeah, I've not really seen much gameplay from this game, but it does look cool. Again, I do think it's sort of the preview of a I think a Super Smash Brothers RPG game would be absolutely awesome because like, Super Smash Brothers is like their biggest thing and the story is always hinted at in the games. You always get some cinematic trailers to a story that never really fully takes off. It's all very classic Nintendo, but I think if they can
Mhm.
sort of morph that into this, it'll be awesome. But yeah, 59.99 available online and in store.
Yeah, I have to figure out the whole Nintendo Store and Switch stuff. I have a Switch, I have a
Looks cool.
Nintendo like account, but like I
Yeah,
don't necessarily know how to download games and like all that kind of stuff. So I gotta
it's
figure all
always
that
very
out.
fun to have a Nintendo product. But yeah,
Yeah, I
the
do.
Switch is
Man, I
awesome.
love my Steam Deck though.
I know,
I
yeah,
was playing
I bet.
Lego Star Wars on it yesterday. Ugh. Oh
Oh yeah,
man.
Lego Star Wars. I remember like physically having the sets back in the day. But yeah, dude, I used to love Legos.
Yeah, we got a bunch of Legos for my son, but he's been playing
Hell
with
yeah.
Brios right now because he's a little bit too young for all that.
Getting them started.
But yeah, getting him started. I mean, even the Brio,
Right.
that's really fun. I don't know if you ever had that, but it's like wooden, like train track kind of stuff. And it's like puzzle
I didn't have
pieces, you
them,
can
but I
put it
think I
together.
remember them being a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got a bunch of like Thomas the Tank Engine train cars for it. And yeah, it's real fun because you can just like lay out
Hell yeah.
track and then like play train on it.
So I do want to get back to Super Mario RPG just for a second. I will
Yeah,
say that the reception for the game has been good. Even though we're
yeah,
not huge fans, it's important for us to at least, sort of state what everyone's saying about it. I think on Metacritic it has a 90, oh, it has an 87%, which is pretty good. Metacritic usually has very, very fair numbers. They're usually a little bit more fair than
yes.
Rotten Tomatoes, even though Rotten Tomatoes is more TV and film versus like an all-in-one. But the reception's good. It's good. So it seems like Nintendo, I don't know if Nintendo ever doesn't have a hit. It seems like they always carefully plan their stuff out and everything is usually well received by their fans, which is interesting because no other video game company really has that guaranteed.
Well, so you bring up Metacritic, right,
Yeah,
for being fair and partial.
Metacritic.
So it's giving Super Mario RPG an 83, which is pretty
There you
good
go.
value, like money value for like a entertainment product, right?
Yeah, of
At
course. Yes, yes,
$59,
yes.
$60, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Marvels is at 50,
A 50, damn. Like I said,
50 from Metacritic.
Metacritic is usually more fair than Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes can be a little bit buzzy, a little bit clickbaity sometimes, if that makes sense. But Metacritic seems a little bit more I hate the word nuance, but I guess that's what you can say.
I
That's
don't know.
probably the wrong word.
It's really weird because it existed in a different space. Metacritic came up from what used to be like Steam reviews,
Really.
from yeah, um,
You're
because before the Steam store had all the reviews and like had all that kind of stuff, like it would attach a Metacritic to it,
cool.
like a score, and like this used to be used in like PC games and all this kind of stuff. And maybe it kind of highlights like the kind of people that are scoring this kind of content, right?
Hmm.
Because people that actually know that like, hey, I could play video games for this amount of time and I can spend this much money and like get this much time out of it. Like think about how many people have bought Skyrim and like played it several times over, right? Like
Right,
games that
exactly.
have that kind of expansiveness to it. I mean, like how many times have we played?
And they get involved in it, into
Yeah,
the details, and and how
like
complex
how
it
many
is. Yeah, for
times have we
sure.
played like Halo or like Final Fantasy, like the originals, like 5 and 6, right?
Hmm. No,
How much
it's
value we've
crazy.
gotten out of it compared to like the movies that we've purchased or something that we've watched once, maybe.
That's why I always like reading and watching reviews of things that like people touching base on something that's been out for a year and they have like an updated review because they spent some time with it. They've gotten to know the ins and outs, all of the nooks and crannies. Like they've gotten to explore the entire product instead of having to rush out a review for the sake of clicks or likes
Yeah.
or or ad revenue. So it is like you never really know unless you follow them individually, which can be sort of a hard thing to do because there's so much out there. But it's always it is interesting thinking about the fact that there are different types of reviewers. So like at the end, who has the loudest voice? Is it the people that spend time with it, or is it the people that's paid to rush it out?
Well,
So I do think
I think it's completely different, right? There's always a bell curve for purchasing stuff. There's the bell curve of
Mhm,
like early adoption where it costs a lot and very few people are going to buy it. And then there's kind of like
mhm.
it climbs up a little bit and then it plateaus. And if it's a device like a phone or something like this, then it's going to kind of stay that, maybe like trail off a little bit because everybody needs that kind of device. But if it's something else um like generally for a movie, like it's gonna kind of have like a tail end where it's not gonna earn anything after a certain amount of time, right? Like nobody's going back and watching. God, what's a movie that's nobody watching, Dan? Dan, what movie are you watching? Solely. Solely. Yeah, not a lot of people are watching Solely like after that, right? Like it might be used in
What's Sully? What the hell
aviation
is that?
kind of stuff. Solely, Sullenberger, the United flight that went down in the Hudson.
Oh, you mean Sully?
Yeah,
Is it Sully?
Solely.
Gotcha. Hey, that was a good film. I
Yeah,
was surprised by how good that was. That bastard. He was cool though. I
that's
didn't mean
what
to call
Dan's
him that. I
watching
was
right
saying
now.
that
He's doing
respectively.
some editing for a
Respectfully.
video we're working on.
Oh, really? Hell
Um,
yeah. No, that's a really good film.
but yeah, so there's kind of there needs to be content at all the points of the life cycle of a product, right? Like
Hmm.
one thing that I'm looking at doing is I have a baby coffee maker. It's called a baby Brisa, but it uses baby formula to make like baby milk bottles. It's really
Yeah, I
cool.
remember you.
But
Yeah,
we've
that
had it for
which
like two
is cool.
years, and I've been
We
meaning
had
to
that when I
do
was a
like
kid.
content on it. So I've written out most of what I want to say for it. It'll be more of like how to take it apart and like clean it kind of video.
Hmm.
But I also do want to like incorporate some like, hey, I've had it for 2 years and I've nearly used it every single day. Like, here's the things that I found out about it. Like, that's important content to be made, but it's also like that type of thing never
It's
got like
personal.
an
Yeah.
initial review kind of like product description video probably by anybody.
Hmm.
Like, who's going to make a video on that kind of stuff? And that's kind of things that I want to look at
Exactly.
too, like, you know, from a technology perspective, because it's really simple and they have ones that like connect to your phone and like you can just wake up and
See,
like do
that's what I
Bluetooth,
like.
or you can like do
Connectivity.
timers with it and like all kinds of crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy how we're getting to this point in life where the smartphone is kind of like the hub. If everything is connected to your smartphone, then it's kind of like your central hub for operating your house or your life. When you look at films like, let's take the Avengers into perspective. Iron Man has this this transparent sort of glass phone that doesn't look like it has any hardware in it. But what it most likely is it's just like a wireless touch screen display
Yeah,
that's
like
connected to some other
PlayStation
device.
Portal.
Right. It's connected to something else. Something else has the CPU, something else has the RAM, the storage space, and it's just basically like a wireless display. And I feel like we're getting to that point where, there will be wireless displays around us at all. And I think I've mentioned this several times before, but the smartphone will effectively one day it may not even have, it may turn into something else that doesn't even have a display. The displays will be all around you, and that's just where all the processing's going. But I think it's cool
There's
to have stuff
actually,
like that.
this is like way off track, but there's actually a
Oh no, you're
video.
fine.
There's actually a video that's like that view the just like toxic VR world where it's like
Hmm.
everything has an ad on it. Like you go to the apples and like each one of the apples are individually priced at like the supermarket and they all have like flashy
Hmm.
little icons on it, like that kind of dystopian thing. But then it shows like what that was like being hacked in real time, like from a first person perspective, and it's just like it's actually utterly jarring. I can't even imagine what that would be like.
So you wouldn't like stuff like that? Like
Well, I
being
think
able
there's
to
I
like
think there's
use.
a like it's like the encroachment of billboards on like driving sign like on highways. Like
Hmm.
it's advertisements are just getting more and more invasive. Like if we have that kind of technology that like a contact lens or glasses that we can wear that have augmented reality, it's just going to be saturated with
Hmm.
advertisements unless you pay
Yeah,
like a service fee for
unless
being
you
able to use
unless
it.
you pay for it, there you go. There's always a way out. No, I think it's good for I support things like that only because I feel like society is becoming so fast. Things are
Well,
updating
it's
so
just it's so
fast.
hard to
I need a
to
little help.
support
I
because
can't
it's
make
no
all my
longer about
decisions
the
for myself
device. Like you're
anymore.
talking about like a phone that where its processing power is somewhere else and it's just a wireless device that you like
Yeah.
replace.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly
it's
right.
yeah, it's kind of like that already, but like
Slowly. There's
it
not
just all needs
everything
to be Apple
is
or it all needs to be Google or it all needs to be
no,
Microsoft.
no, no,
But
no, no,
actually, it
no.
doesn't have to be all Microsoft because Microsoft is kind of open like that.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like there's a lot more partnerships behind the scenes than people realize, and I think we are going to a place where these companies will be able to share their advancements, share their technologies with other software companies, and as long as everyone has their customer base, they can. It's almost like using Android but having a launcher. Android will still exist, everybody can use it, but you have all these launchers from Samsung, Motorola, all these UIs that you can put overtop it. And I feel like, Apple will be able to do stuff on Android and or Google will be able to do stuff on iOS. I mean, you
Oh,
have
we're
Gmail,
never gonna see Apple, Android, anything. That's never gonna happen.
hey, and Apple is being forced to
They
offer
will
side
talk, but
loading
they will
in
never live in the
iOS.
same house.
Dude, Apple is being forced by the European Union to sideload or to be able to offer side loading in iOS.
In the
So,
European Union. And that's side loading, but that's not
good
Android.
point.
That's just being able to install apps without the App Store.
Exactly. But what if developers are making this stuff? I don't know. What if it goes well and people buy iPhones more because of it? They may make it official. It's all about money.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
enough
don't
about
know.
tech. We need to talk about the film industry
Yeah.
because
All right.
we
Well,
got the
what's our
DC
next
is being
topic?
reinvented. Oh, I guess I should pull it up because my memory sucks. So, dude, James Gunn is now the head of DC Films. I think it was previously Zack Snyder, and then obviously a couple of people took over after that, and everything failed. I think DC's had three flops this year. Aquaman's coming out later this year on December 25th. So that's going to be awesome. That will be the end of the DCEU. Now we have the DCU, which competes with the MCU, and Superman Legacy, I think, will be the second film involved. The first film was Blue Beetle. Hey, so Blue Beetle is the first film in the DC universe, the DCU. And the second movie is going to be Superman Legacy, which is being directed by James Gunn. This really is supposed to set off the DCU and everything that's supposed to compete with Marvel going forward. Um, it looks like Lex Luthor has finally been cast in Superman Legacy, so it looks like he will be a villain in the story. We don't know if Superman Legacy is sort of going to be like a Batman versus Superman, where it's going to have like a shared universe already implemented. It's already going to be like an Avengers level event, or if it's going to be a standalone project that sort of plants seeds and sets the tone for future team ups for the Justice League. But Nicholas Hoult is Lex Luthor, the previous Lex Luthor. I forgot his name. Fuck, he played
Jesse
in
Eisenberg.
Jesse
Jesse
Eisenberg.
Eisenberg.
Yes, I loved him as Lex Luthor. I thought he was amazing. His people did not like him as Lex Luthor for the most part. So I think Nicholas Hoult will definitely um, be received in a more positive light. What's your thoughts on this new DC project and these new castings?
Yeah, so I remember him in X-Men and Mad Max.
Yeah, he was Beast. Amen. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So that's gonna be kind of
He's a good
interesting.
actor.
I kind of see DCU as more willing to like recast characters, which is kind
Yeah,
of exciting. Because it's been kind of a tragedy that's unfolded on Marvel that they've lost essentially all their big names from the Phase One, right? Like Tony Stark,
yeah.
uh, what Robert Downey doesn't want to do Iron Man anymore. Um,
Chris Evans.
Chris Hemsworth wants to do Thor, but it's getting kind of tired of it. You can kind of see it. Yeah, Chris Evans and um, yeah. So I hope this goes better for them. I definitely want them to make better movies.
Yeah, it seems like this time as Superman, they're gonna be more influenced from the Christopher Reeves version. It seems like after the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan, it seemed like DC wanted to explore more of the dark and gritty side, which I think is why Zack Snyder created a more emotional, more dark, more deep film with Man of Steel, and then moving forward to Batman vs Superman and Justice League. I think now they're going to more so go back to the happier version of Superman, not necessarily the deconstructed version. They're more so going to start off. I don't know if it's going to be an origin story. It might not, but it seems like things are going to be a little bit more lighter and family friendly with this version of Superman. Um, I think in Man of Steel, one of the more negative opinions about it was, or the thing that people didn't like was that Metropolis got destroyed and there was a lot of death. At the end of that movie, it wasn't really like a happy feeling. People didn't really feel like they were inspired by that version. And I think this time around it's going to be a little bit more of a lighter tone. So um, I don't know if Lex Luthor will be the actual villain or if it's going to be. There was somebody else who was apparently supposed to be the villain. It was a female. I forgot the name of the character that she was playing, but Lex may just be somebody in the back who they're sort of like leading into to be a villain later on. I'm not sure, but I wasn't really I,
I mean,
I didn't really like that James Gunn.
what was the Lex Luthor before James Gunn did it? It was
Oh, it was
Smallville.
Jesse Eisenberg, but before that it was Kevin Spacey. So Kevin Spacey was Lex in Superman
I guess
Returns
I'm
in
thinking the one before
2006.
that.
The best
Before
Lex is
that,
Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville. He's the best Lex Luthor.
God, Smallville. I did not see Smallville, so I'm not familiar with that version of Lex. I do think it would be. I don't know how they're going to be able to trans. I don't know how they're going to be able to do something from the TV shows in film because I think that yeah, that Lex probably was good in Smallville, but it had multiple years, almost a decade, for them to be able to develop that character and for them to be able to do something like that in a 2 or 3 hour movie and then not to be able to revisit that until a year or two later is it's gonna be hard. You know, I don't know if people like that Lex because of the amount of time they had to repeatedly see him, or if they liked him because it was a good interpretation. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see how they do that in this new DCU. Because DC fans are always divided. They always like the TV shows, but they never like the movies, unless it's Christopher Nolan, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
Also,
Yeah, it's kind of hard because it's just a different way of consuming content. Like
of
for
course,
movies to work, like they need to be a smaller scope than they always are. They always want to do something so like grand and wild with it, right? But
but
like when we
Endgame
go
made
back
$3
and we
billion.
look at like remarkable movies that aren't in Marvel or DCU, right? We
Right.
come
Good
back to
point.
things like District 9, right?
Oh, that
Like
was a good film.
right?
It
Like
was
we can
weird, but
agree
it
on
was
that. Like
good.
that was a good film, and that had a very, very, very narrow focus, right? It's about
Right.
a small city in Johannesburg and like one character and like how he interacts with the world and like how he changes. But for like an Avengers level movie, they have like 30 characters and like at least five of them have different arcs that they're all kind of exploring, and it's just like that they could have spent more time developing that in different content and then focusing on something very short and unique in the Avengers movies. Like I think that would have made it a little bit better. Um because like that's kind of like we don't need a character in every movie to explain how he feels about the world. Like they can just show that through
But
action.
that worked in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. See, this is where I'm sort of conflicted because, you know, we got deconstruction with Christopher Nolan and everyone liked it. It was deep. There was a lot of dialogue, a lot. There was more dialogue in those three movies than there was action. In fact, that's why people liked it. So, like, and sorry if I get emotional
I
about
don't
this.
necessarily think it's the the inclusion of dialogue or the exclusion of dialogue. It's the
It took
quality of
us three
dialogue,
movies to understand why he was in love with Rachel. I mean, it's just,
which
yeah,
they
there,
replaced halfway through, and it wasn't
I
even an
know,
issue.
yep, Maggie Gyllenhaal. But I'm just
But
saying,
like
though, like,
that I don't think
why
that was
was it
actually the
okay to
point of
do it?
The Dark Knight trilogy. The Dark
Of
Knight
course, I'm
trilogy
just
was
saying,
like
though, but they were definitely explaining their feelings about a lot of stuff in those movies. So that's why I was bringing it up because you do have a lot of feelings and emotion and a lot of
I
explanation in those
well,
films.
it's the quality of the delivery, right? Like I'm not saying that I don't want to feel characters or I don't want to empathize with characters, right? But I don't need to be told how to empathize with characters. And like that's where a lot of the people in like have you watched Blue Beetle yet?
Not yet. I do want to. I'm not
Like
necessarily
I
set on the whole
understand
family friendly thing, so I've been avoiding it for that
well
reason.
yeah, it's that's not it. Like for me, and I feel like what a lot of other people maybe aren't able to articulate is that like we understand inclusivity, we understand this, but being told that everything else is bad or something like I struggle playing with it because like it, George Lopez's character in the Blue Beetle was absolutely wild and crazy, and I kind of love that about him. But like
Yeah.
there's also like these
But in Black Adam, it did not go that well. I haven't seen Blue Beetle yet, but the family in Black Adam was annoying as shit. Every time they showed them, it bothered me. Oh my God.
well
All I wanted to see was Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam destroying shit. That's all I wanted. I didn't want
yeah
all that other stuff.
yeah right
Sorry.
yeah and I mean a lot of Blue Beetle is about like oh this is like oh this racist oh the government's gonna come after me oh they hate immigrants like all this kind of stuff
Hmm.
and it's like that's not like stop pointing lights at that stuff like that doesn't
Yeah.
like that's not what drives most people like that's like we don't it's almost like it's like continuing to perpetuate it right like perpetuating a stereotype that doesn't necessarily exist or maybe doesn't exist to the extent that we think it exists
Well, you
um
do. Okay, so you do. Okay, so let's take into account, let's look at The Winter Soldier, right? You do have that movie that incorporates government and spying and racism. You have, like the government is slaughtering everyone who doesn't basically agree with the whole like Illuminati slash Hydra thing. So like it does happen in superhero films. You do have instances where there is like conspiracy level events in superhero films, and it does work. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's bad, right? I think Latinos and Mexicans and foreigners in America do need to be represented in some light. It hasn't really happened before, so I don't necessarily think that's bad. Um, I think there's a way to do it, and I can't say if Blue Beetle did it or not. I didn't like Black Adam and the way they did it with that one. I just think that can't spend half the movie talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not
Like
all the
it's
same.
more
I
about
do
like
think representation is
I think
important, but I
I think
don't.
like if I had to put a number on it, like for Blue Beetle, like 60% of that movie and its content were completely topical and relationable only to like a small portion of the community at this time in the world, right? Like not even
Mhm.
globally speaking, and not even temporally, like long term thinking, right? Like uh,
I think the origin story is done. I think that we've gotten too many origin movies, and I think that at this point,
yeah, see
they basically
that's kind of
need
what
to spend the
I think about. Like it just
I don't want to spend an hour getting to know someone. I think that at this point, you need to bring them in, have their powers, do something like Homecoming, where it wasn't, even though we had seen it before, there has to be a way for them to make the whole origin aspect shorter. We've been getting origin stories in superheroes,
well, I
what,
mean,
for 20 years now? In this sort of
yeah, and
high
like
definition, like new way,
and
it gets
I
boring.
feel like it's so strange sometimes because like even like the first Supermans, it was like, hey, he became the Spider-Man and then he dies at the end, or like he doesn't like continue being Spider-Man after that.
Yeah.
And like the Marvels did that with, or not the Marvels, but the Avengers did that with Iron Man. Like, how can you go back and explore Iron Man when we had like his entire story already? Like,
Right.
what are you gonna slip in? Like, oh man, there was maybe like a super monster attack that he saved like sometime in between, like when he died in the Avengers.
Yeah, well, this is where I think we agree when it comes to the writing. There is a way to get it done.
Yeah.
For some reason, you just don't have people who are
Well,
creative enough in
I don't think they
Hollywood to
thought
be able
about
to
it in
find
the
out a way
long
to
run.
do
Like
it.
they don't think about like, oh, like is Iron Man going to be doing Iron Man things for 15 years before the Avengers came along and like did all their stuff, right? Well,
Right,
like
exactly.
that's the time that we should explore. Like, but I mean, I don't have a timeline. I don't know, but it seems like the events of the Avengers up to the snap was like from Iron Man to then was like maybe 2 or 3 years, right? And then like the snap happened and it lasted 5 years. But we don't have any like good we don't have any content from that kind of time frame, right? Like that was kind of majorly glossed over, like what people did in that time. And then we come back in like phase 3 and it's like, oh yeah, the snap is undone and like everybody's back, but like how do we deal with that? It's like well, we didn't even deal with like them all being gone in the first place.
Well, yeah, but I think at that point you do have the actors and the actresses and the contracts. Now, at that point, that's sort of getting in the way of the story. Like, yeah, it would have
Oh
been nice
yeah.
to cover
Yeah,
all that
because
stuff,
they've
but
grown
Scarlett
beyond
Jo
like and it's the same thing that I guess that DCU is trying to fix by recasting characters.
starting over again, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing with Superman. We've had so many fucking iterations of this guy
I was
and
just looking
Lois.
at
You
the
just have a
filmography.
you just have a TV series on the CW that's ending, and now we have like how many times have we done the like Lois and Clark happy relationship, everybody gets saved? How many times have we seen that version of Superman on like in media? It's happened too many times for me to be able to like count in my lifetime. And not only that, but you had times before the 90s where it was done as well. I just, of course, I'm a big fan of Snyder. I just hope James Gunn is able to get the creative team that he needs to be able to pull this off because it can't be boring, but it can't be too actiony because I don't know. I don't really know what the fans are looking for now. Because when Zack Snyder went back and did Man of Steel, he sort of gave us the character before Superman was really ready to take on the mantle. He sort of got everything from the ground up before
Yeah,
he
you
was able
know,
to really
Superman
understand
hasn't
himself,
saved
and
the
people
world
didn't like
from
that.
aliens in a while, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, because it's kind
It's
of interesting. Superman 1 and Superman 2, aliens. It's kind of
which I
like
barely saw.
yeah, I mean, those were like in the 70s and 80s.
You're right.
But it's actually
But they didn't
interesting.
have CGI then, so everything was
Yeah,
so quick. They didn't have
1978,
time to really
1980,
dive in.
1983, 1987, and then the next gap is
I think those movies
2006.
sucked. Sorry. Even James Gunn
Dude,
himself said that
Superman
Tim
4 has a
Burton.
24 on Metacritic.
Hold on. Let me get this out real quick. Even James Gunn said the Tim Burton Batman films weren't that good, and I agree with him. They're not that good. Even when Michael Keaton came back for The Flash, it flopped. I think
Yeah.
people hold on to this like nostalgia, how we were talking about with Super Mario RPG. People hold on to this nostalgic feeling without being able to move forward with other iterations. And when I go back and watch the Tim Burton Batman films, I don't get much out of them. They're a little bit too wacky for me. Uh, the guy that played the Joker, I forgot his name. Sorry, I
Danny
haven't eaten
DeVito.
breakfast yet. No, that was
No,
Penguin.
he's
The other guy, Jack Nicholson.
Jack
Him as the
Nicholson.
Joker is not even fun for me to watch. Like everyone loves that version of the Joker. I think it's kind of boring.
Oh, I've seen something recently, and it's like, did it hold up? And you like watch old movies and TV shows and like see if they'd get made today based on like their characters and stuff. It's kind of funny because most of the content from the 70s and 80s and even 90s do not hold up.
Yeah, but everyone still thinks that it does. See, this is where Marvel sort of had a way to reinvent themselves because Marvel didn't have that many live action versions of their character. We had never seen Iron Man or Thor before on the big screen. The thing about fucking DC is that they have too many versions of Batman and Superman that people can't let go of. Marvel didn't have that. People got to see
Yeah.
things for the first time. So I think that's why DC is sort of having an issue now doing this yet again. Hey, I will give them this. The Batman with Robert Pattinson was fucking awesome. That was amazing. But that's Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves is a really good director. James
Yeah.
Gunn is also a really good director. So I think if Matt Reeves could reinvent Batman almost, I mean, perfectly, that movie was amazing. It was also successful too. It made $700 million. So I just, I hope James Gunn can pull it off. I think he can.
I mean, here's to hoping.
Yeah, dude, I want DC to succeed. We need to let go of the 70s and
Yeah, I
80s
mean,
and move on to the
I
future
just
of
want
DC.
movies to be better. Honestly, I just want them to be better.
Well, if you need hope, dude, go watch The Batman. Have you seen that yet? I know it came out in 2022, but I just saw it this year and it was amazing, dude. It was awesome.
I have not seen that one yet.
Dude, you should see it. Hopefully we can review it one day. We'll see.
Yeah.
What time is it?
Well, I think that's all we have time for today here on the Vertical Bubble Podcast. As always, it's been a blast exploring technology with all of you.
Indeed, it has, Jared. Indeed, it has.
I should have given you some more warning, huh?
It's okay. I have like 80 tabs open. So we're gonna okay. Indeed, it has, Jared. And remember, folks, if you want to learn more about the topics we discuss, check out the description with links to our social media profiles. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast for more tech adventures.
Absolutely, Marcus. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out with your comments, ideas, or just say hi. We're on all social media platforms as Vertical Bar Media.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, the only constant in technology is change.
Nice. Nailed it.
That was really good. I always like that we do the like film industry at the end because it's always really engaging, and I think the momentum always picks back up again. So I think for the past couple of weeks, dude, we've been nailing this.